Welcome to The Art of Growth. I am Jim Zartman, and I'm usually joined here by Joel Hubbard, but ironically, he is in the room next to me right now, working with one of you, which is awesome, coaching one of you, while I give the introduction here to an interview I did with a special guest. His name is Jim Trick. He has a great name, Jim Trick. Jim Trick is a sought-after speaker, an author, and an executive life coach. Jim has devoted his life to empowering companies, organizations, and individuals to change what is possible. Jim also toured for many years as a professional singer-songwriter. He has done extensive work with the organization Banding People Together. Jim has impacted the way companies such as ESPN and SunTrust and NASA and Focus Brands and Cisco, Universal Health Services, Wentworth Douglas, and National Vision empower their employees to step into the best version of themselves when working with others. I will say that Jim is one of the more engaging people I've ever seen in front of an audience because of his authenticity, his vulnerability, and how intimately he brings you into his story. And so many times we see people in a specific way and we miss the point because we are often comparing our behind the scenes with their highlight reel. And so you hear a bit of Jim's resume here, as you often hear at the beginning of a podcast. You hear someone's resume, but you don't get the backstory of actually what they had to go through, the struggle they had to go through in order to get there. And whenever someone goes on one of those journeys, they learn incredibly powerful lessons. And so I am so excited to share with you today the journey of Mr. Jim Trick.
I had done my typical loop where on my way home from the office, I stopped at Burger King and got a double Whopper. But you would never get lettuce and tomatoes and those kinds of things because the potential of it spilling over onto your shirt and giving away the meal before the meal needed to be avoided. So I had had a double Whopper, a large order of fries, and a Diet Coke on my way to dinner. And dinner with my friends was always, grilled chicken on a salad because you never wanted to make it actually look like you were eating the way that you were actually eating. And so on my way home from dinner, I had also done the typical thing, which was to order a large extra cheese pizza. But when I got home with it, I realized that my electricity had been turned off because my financial life was as out of control as the rest of my life. And I knew that I had a big problem when I found myself actually sitting in the dark of my apartment, eating the pizza, and not eating it passively, like devouring a large pizza by myself after a double Whopper and dinner with my friends. But now I'm binging in the dark because I decided that it would be a good idea to eat this pizza before I even called the electric company to have my lights turned back on. At that point in my life, I was 430 pounds, and I was wearing a size 66-inch pair of pants. I couldn't fly in one airplane seat. I couldn't pee standing up. Ironically, I couldn't fit in a booth in a restaurant. We would look at restaurants, we'd scope them out to make sure that they had seats that I referred to as FPF, fat people friendly restaurants. That was my life for a really, really, really long time.
How old were you at that point?
I guess I would have been 28, around 28 years old at that time, and had started binge eating in my very early 20s. So I'm about a decade into binge eating at this point. I had always been the quote unquote fat kid in school and had been bullied mercilessly. I had a funny last name. I was really into chorus, which was not cool in my school.
You lettered in Glee Club. I love
got my
that.
varsity high school letter in Glee Club while all the other kids were getting their brown and gold H's. I was getting a brown and gold H with a G clef in it. They all had baseballs and footballs, and got my varsity high school letter in Glee Club. So I had been using food as a sort of a numbing agent for a long time.
Well, what do you feel like you were numbing? What were you trying to numb at that point, if you were able to pinpoint it?
I think that it was a whole bunch of things. My dad was... My relationship with my dad was very polarized, so parts of my childhood were very Norman Rockwell and beautiful. But he was also the adult child of an alcoholic who could be explosively angry and violent. And so I learned at a really young age that if I could be funny and engaging and make him look good in front of his friends, that I would avoid his wrath. So I have a sort of a hyper-developed performer part that would make him look good. But always, I think, craving a level of love and affirmation from him that I never got. And what I actually got was a very heavy-handed upbringing. So there was no safe place for me. And I think that the food became a safe place. The feeling that you have when you're full, the control that you have over your situation. A bag of chips never lets you down. A pizza is always there for you, and it's always good. And people would say, well, didn't you get sick? And that's the whole point. No, I didn't get sick. I loved it. I loved every bite.
Wow.
But I think, so I was probably numbing. My relationship with my dad was tumultuous. When I was 13, my mother and I watched my father suffer a massive brainstem stroke in a train station in Boston. So, and that combined with the bullying, it wasn't an easy childhood. Not that I don't think any of us really have it easy. And certainly people who have had it way, way worse than I have, but that was my experience. And the way that I dealt with it was by trying to be a funny kind of clown guy and eating a lot of food.
And at the time, it felt like both of those things were working with you, or were you profoundly aware that like this is not working or unsustainable? Like, how did you view your situation at that time?
I think I had probably gotten used to it, but there was a part of me that knew that I was feeding the cycle of the thing that was creating my pain. So I was getting bullied for being fat, and I was eating to deal with the pain of being bullied. So it was like this circle, right, that I really couldn't find my way out of. And I didn't even really think I had a choice.
What do you mean you didn't feel like you had a choice?
Like I had no idea how to change it. It was an Italian household, and we weren't awake to the idea of what processed carbs and sugar do to your body. Now we're going back to like the very early 80s, right? We're eating pasta. Everything is pasta. Everything is bread. I was eating 2 bagels in the morning, The idea of even having a process or the wherewithal of how I would change. Portion control was not, at that point in my life, an option. I was a full-blown creature of habit, and my culture supported that habit. And my family, everybody in my family had weight problems. It was just like, that's who we were.
Mm-hmm. What was the emotional landscape like on a daily basis for this time then?
It's interesting. After my dad got sick, my mom sort of took over both roles of being dad and mom, and she did an incredible job of it. I had, by high school, found my people, and so my chorus friends, some of the bullying started to let up. I had my music friends. I had my rock music friends, which was a totally different thing. My father had made me take guitar lessons in middle school, which in middle school, playing guitar was not cool. It was just another way to get your ass kicked.
Really?
And, true story. And I remember I had wanted a guitar because my big brothers had them, but I didn't know that if my dad got me a guitar that he was going to require me to take lessons. So I took a lesson. I hated it. And he said, you will play the guitar. You will take lessons. You will play guitar until the end of the 8th grade, at which point you will never have to play the guitar again if you don't want. And then he said the phrase that you never, ever wanted to hear him say. He was a Navy chief for 22 years. He was 6'4". He had hands the size of small dogs. And he would finish sentences with the phrase, end of report. And no one ever spoke after end of report. And when he laid down the guitar lesson mandate, he finished with end of report, which meant every Saturday morning for 3 years, I was going to the Haverhill Music Center and taking my guitar lesson. So when this will get back to what was the emotional landscape like. But so I did music in middle school, got my ass beat for it. And my first day of my freshman year of high school, I'm like, I've been released. I'm no longer going to sing. I'm no longer going to play the guitar. I'm no longer going to do things that are going to get me made fun of. And I show up at the bus stop, and all the older high school kids, 3 of them, had guitar cases. And I'm looking at him and I'm like, what are you guys doing? And they're like, yeah, we're in a band. We play guitar, And I'm like, playing guitar is cool in high school. And they're like, yeah, what are you talking about? And they all had electric guitars, right? And I had played the acoustic guitar, but I knew all the chords. And so my landscape begins to change because I'm finding my people. I'm like, oh my gosh, I know how to play the guitar. I have a place where I can fit in. The thing that was destroying me in middle school. And then the chorus teacher had me summoned down to the chorus room on my first day of high school. And she's like, oh, we're here to sign you up for chorus. And I'm like, oh, I'm not going to sing in chorus anymore. And she's like, but you did it all through middle school. And I'm like, yeah, but I'm done now. She called me down 3 days in a row. And then she got a couple of the upperclassmen. I'm sitting at lunch in the cafeteria at the geek table my first week of high school, and Eddie Felker and Terry DeGranier walk up to the table and they go, are you Trick? And I go, yep. And I'm like, oh no, I know it's coming now. I'm going to get my ass beat by upperclassmen because they know they know my reputation for being a great punching bag from middle school. And they're like, you're sitting with us today. And I was like, okay. And they're like, and you're joining the chorus because we need more guys. And they literally bullied me into joining the chorus. And you got bullied into. I got bullied into the chorus. But it's the one of the best things that's literally ever happened to me. So great. Things start to change, right? So now I have some friends, but what hasn't changed is this deep intrinsic sort of sense that at the end of the day, there really isn't a safe place. I am welcomed into this group because I have a decent singing voice because I can play the guitar, but feeling like there's something intrinsically wrong with me that would make my dad want to behave the way he did, and that would dodge his bullets by being a performer and numbing that pain with the food. None of that deeper stuff changed even as I developed friends and found my people.
So take me from there to the story you brought us into right at the beginning, where you're sitting in the dark eating the whole pizza.
Yeah.
What happened between those two lines that it felt like? Or was that, did something get worse, or was there a straight line that was like a continuation of? So
I kind of go through middle school and high school just being the fat kid, but not so fat that like, people would go, oh my gosh. It was more like, just you got to have a fat kid in your school, and I was it. I realized that it was going to become a big problem when I was about 19 years old. I was just out of high school, and I had some really dear friends. And all my guy friends, they had girlfriends, which I didn't have because as the fat guy, you are the friend guy. So they all had girlfriends. And they had jobs. I had a job too, but I remember this one Sunday afternoon. My crew was either at work or they were out with their girlfriends. And it was a really hot summer afternoon, and I had decided to go through the Kentucky Fried Chicken drive-thru. And I had never done anything like this before by myself. I went through the drive-thru and I ordered a family meal with all of the sides and 2 or 3 drinks that were different. One was probably a Diet Coke because I don't know why, but obese people love Diet Coke. It's refreshing and delicious. I don't touch it now, but at the time I drank gallons of Diet Coke. Oh, so I ordered a family meal with all the sides and a bunch of sodas. Then I drove around to the back of the Kentucky Fried Chicken near the dumpster, and I sat there and I ate the entire family meal by myself. And I knew that was when I kind of said, okay, this is going to be a big problem. This is going to be a big problem because I really liked it. But I also felt like I had a little voice in the back of my head going, oh no. Oh no. I would imagine that it's what any kind of addict feels or experiences.
Just that oh no feeling. Like
Yeah. I continued throughout my 20s to eat that way. And because my persona was so jolly and funny and magnetic and entertaining, people always wanted me around and no one ever said anything. I was a pastor. I was a youth pastor, right? In a pretty judgmental subculture, right? Coming out of this sort of right-leaning evangelical thing where, man, they're looking for people to judge. They're looking for people to be hard on. And no one ever said anything to me. It was accepted. Kids liked coming to my youth group, right? People liked coming to the church when I was leading. And no one ever gave me a hard time about it, which is really interesting.
Do you wish they would?
Well, I do because of what happened. I told you the story about the electricity going out.
No, that was when you were a youth pastor?
I had just left my position as a youth pastor. This has been 28 years old. I leave my youth pastor post. I worked for like 3 different churches over my 20s. And then I was going to not be on staff at a church, but tour as a Christian musician and speaker, a morbidly obese Christian musician and youth speaker. So I was keynoting 2,000 high school kid events. And I actually wound up getting married to somebody who was like 4'11" and weighed like 120 pounds, which is crazy. My second year of marriage, I decided that I would have gastric bypass surgery. That's the surgery, they call it stomach stapling. It's really more than that. But I lay down on a table at Massachusetts General Hospital and I had this procedure that could have killed me. I was terrified because putting somebody that big under anesthesia is incredibly dangerous. I have gastric bypass surgery and I finally lose weight. I get down to 270 pounds and everyone can't believe how good I look, blah, 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 blah. And over the course of 3 years, I put back on almost all of the weight. It was humiliating. So now I'm in like my early 30s. I've had a couple years as a relatively thin guy, incredibly thin and fit for me. And I reintroduced bread. I remember I was married at the time. I'm not married anymore, but when I was married, we went on this cruise and I was like, oh, I've totally got this under control. And then I was faced with hot, fresh, delicious rolls and I decided I would eat some bread. And it was just like picking up the drink again. It was that moment I remember. And yeah, within about 3 years, I was back up to almost 400 pounds. And at that point, I gave up. I gave up.
What does that mean?
I had decided that this was just how I was going to be for the rest of my life. For the rest of my life, I was going to be morbidly obese. I had just accepted it. Along the way, I would say that I had tried and tried and tried. And what I mean is I had tried a little bit of everything, but it never lasted for more than a day or two. Atkins was popular, Weight Watchers was popular, these different programs. And I had just kind of like, I would play around with them, but I wouldn't stick to anything. And then I had a morning that I woke up and I don't know, I can't explain it, Jim. There was something that was stirring inside me. It was this feeling like it was time to try again. And I had tried and failed so many times. And yet, something inside was saying it's time to try again. And I woke up and I put on sneakers and I walked out my door. And we live in a really beautiful little seaport town in Massachusetts. And I went for a walk. And I just went for a walk. And it was beautiful. It was a beautiful morning. And I'm walking and I'm thinking it feels good to be up. It feels good to be out, going for a little walk. As I was walking along, I was praying. And a lot of times my prayers are I just ask questions and kind of wait to see if I hear anything. And sometimes I do and sometimes I don't. But I was walking along and I was praying this prayer. I was asking the question, why do we know what to do, but we don't do it? And then I just was repeating that. I know what to do, but I don't do it. Why? Why am I like this?
Wow.
And kind of thinking globally, why are we like this? Because you live long enough to hear people say that about a million different things. It could be about their relationships. It could be about their work or their business or their bodies. I know what to do, but I don't do it. And I felt like the answer that I got, and I want to be clear, it wasn't like an audible voice and it wasn't like, the clouds parted. And the answer that I got was, you don't do what you know to do because you're a slave to your feelings. You're ruled by your feelings. And you live as though you don't have a choice. And that was such a revelation to me. And
how so? Talk more about that. Like, bring us right into that moment, because I feel like there's something here that is so good, and I don't want it to go by too quickly, and I don't want to even move on too quickly for myself because I don't entirely get it.
yeah,
But this is a moment where so many people have experienced, or so many people are right now with some area of their life that they just feel like this is out of control. I know theoretically what to do, or I know what to do, but I don't do it.
In that moment, the only thing that I knew was that even in the face of the strongest feelings, I had a choice. I had a behavioral choice. I didn't at that point have a fleshed out counterbalance to the power of my feelings, which I do now. But in this moment, the only realization that mattered for me was, even if you feel like anything, you feel like eating, you feel discouraged, you feel like sleeping in rather than getting up, you have a choice. You do not have to respond to your feelings as though they have an insurmountable remote control on your heart, life, or experience. And I watched a documentary called Fat, Sick, and Nearly Dead. It's about an Australian guy who comes to the United States and just goes on a juice cleanse and loses a whole bunch of weight. But I saw the title Fat, Sick, and Nearly Dead, and I'm like, well, that pretty much describes me. And so I watched this movie. And then 3 weeks later, I had a gig at a festival. And I got off stage and I was going to put my guitar away and go over to my merch table, and a woman walked up to me. Gina Blaze walked up to me after my concert, and she said, I'd like to talk to you for a minute. And this gets back to your question, do I wish somebody had said something to me? She said, I'd like to talk to you for a minute. And I assume, because after you get off stage at this kind of show, people often want to talk to you about what's going on in their life. They want to get some counsel or have a conversation. And I said, yeah, Gina, I would love to talk to you. Let me just put my guitar down and get over to the CD table. And she said, actually, it's taken me a lot of courage to come up and talk to you right now. And I'm going to ask you to drop what you're doing and talk to me right now. And I said,
wow.
Okay. I said, okay. And I didn't know what was coming. I assumed that it was something big in her life. And she looked at me and she said, Jim, 3 weeks ago, I saw a documentary called Fat, Sick, and Nearly Dead, and I haven't been able to stop thinking about you. And she had no idea. She had no idea that all of the stuff had been stirring in me and that I had watched that documentary. The other thing that she didn't know was, along with this desire to start again, was this fresh vision for what I wanted my life to look like. I've had these moments in my life where I've stopped and I've said, okay, Jim, what do you really want your days to look like? What do you want your average days to look like? And the thing that had come up for me was I had become aware of life coaching and what that was. And I thought, I think I'd be good at that. I think I would love doing that. I think I would love spending my days with audiences that are working on development or individuals that want to change what's possible for their lives. But
so you had a sense of this before you had even walked out your own transformation.
Yeah. Oh, yeah. I had this idea of like, if I'm really honest and I want to figure out what I want my days to look like, this was what was starting to form in me. So now I'm with Gina Blaze, and she's looking at me and she says, I saw this documentary and I haven't been able to stop thinking about you. And in that moment, I didn't do what I probably would have done years earlier, and I think what most of us would do when somebody walks up to you and they call out an area of your life, which is to say, well, what about the areas in your life that you need to change? Or to go back to my hotel room and cry baby that, this person was mean to me. And
shame spiral.
Totally. Exactly. But she didn't have a dog in the fight apart from that she cared about me. And she looked at me and she said, this needs to change. And I said, what needs to change? And she said, your weight needs to change, Jim Trick, because it's keeping you from being who you are. And we need you to be who you are. And I get emotional thinking about it. And I said, who needs me to be who I am? And she said, the world needs you to be who you are, because right now you're not who you are. And I was just like blown away. She said, and now I'm going to pray for you. And I said, right now, Gina, and as you might imagine, yeah. At this point, there's no saying no to Gina Blaze. Like, this lady's going to get her way.
Well, it's a moment of authority. I think there's the moments of authority where we can sometimes meet and change. We have to have this intersection where we have this experience where someone meets us both where we are and with love. It's not judgment, but it's calling out our best self.
Yes.
It's calling out the potential of who you really could be, who you were made to be,
yes,
who you were born to be, and what you were missing.
Yes.
Like, here's how you are missing your life, you are missing your gift, you are missing what you need to be, and we need you to be that.
Yes.
And there is such authority when someone steps in and they say that to you.
In coaching, we call it calling forth. We sit with clients and we call forth their greatness. And I've said to clients, and one of the guys who taught me to be a coach would say, I'm going to stand for somebody's greatness when they can't stand for their own.
Wow, that's good.
And so I'm there with Gina. She had said, you're not going to be able to do this alone. You're going to need to hire somebody to help you. And I said, like a life coach? And she responded by saying, no, Jim, you don't get it. You are a life coach. You are, and she said it, she repeated it like 4 times. She said, you are a life coach. You don't need a life coach. You need a trainer or a nutritionist or somebody like that because you are a life coach. And she had, again, no idea that I had been thinking about, I have a friend who's a coach, who's involved in coach training. And so then she said, I'm going to pray for you. She prayed for me. And after the prayer, and now I'm just like, I don't know what to do with any of this. It's like a perfect storm for me. Mm-hmm. When we came up from the prayer, I said, Gina Blaze, here is my commitment to you and to myself. Within 9 months from today, I will have lost 100 pounds and I will have gotten trained in a coaching curriculum.
Wow.
And 9 months is how long it takes for a new life to be birthed. 9-month cycles have become really important in my life, right? Oh. And this is about 7 years ago that this whole thing went down. So I said, within 9 months, I will have gotten certified in a coaching curriculum and I will have lost 100 pounds. Within 9 months, I had lost 115 pounds and was finishing coach training through Coach Training Institute, which is a coactive methodology that is one of the oldest and most respected coach trainings in the world. And now, 7 years later, I have a fully formed way of understanding the counterbalance of what it's like to be a slave to your feelings, or I know what to do, but I don't do it, or the phrase that, most people say when they have thought they were going to follow through on something, and then they say that death blow phrase, I don't feel like it. I don't feel like it. So that sort of brings us through the initial weight loss and flows into the next season that really has been the brunt of my last 7 years.
Although if you're on our Facebook page or Instagram, I'll have posted a picture of Jim. You're not sitting across from him now. And because now not only did you lose weight, which is one aspect of it.
Yeah.
But you actually have gone into caring for your body in different ways, caring for it in doing jujitsu, which is something, it's so funny. Like, I'm in the middle of this triathlon training.
Yeah.
And my entire life, I've never done anything extremely athletic.
Right.
I always believe this story. Like, well, I'm not athletic. I'm not this.
Yeah.
And I think in all 5 major areas of people's lives, so you have, the spiritual, the relational, the physical, the intellectual, and the financial. Of those 5, most people have something they're pretty good at if they're a functional adult, and they have certain things that they've sort of believed a story about.
Totally.
Like, I can't do it in this area.
Yeah.
Like, if you would have told 32-year-old self,
oh boy,
this is a few years after gastric bypass, you've just put on all this weight.
Yes.
That someday that you were going to be almost half of your current body weight.
Yeah. And
you're going to be competing in a jiu-jitsu tournament.
Yeah. Well, that's the thing. So, so 7 years ago, I started training with a trainer in my town who is, we're doing, and he changed my life, this guy. He actually, for the first time, I was going to my trainer a couple times a week, and I was doing all these exercises, and it was great, and I loved it. And that went on for probably 2.5, 3 years. And then, I was sort of like in a flow, and I would go to the gym without a trainer and kind of kept it going. like a lot of kids growing up in the 80s, we just loved, we had the Karate Kid and all of the ninja movies and of course, Bruce Lee movies. And I had always watched these movies and these shows recreationally and thought, oh man, this would be so cool. This would be so cool to do this. And I had done some karate lessons, but they're the karate lessons where you're kind of like standing there and you never get hit. You never hit anybody. You do jumping jacks and push-ups until you feel like you're going to throw up. And some guy points a rubber knife at you and tells you how to break the grip and walk away. Very Rex Kwon Do for Napoleon Dynamite fans. My 10-week program. But a year and a half ago, I started training full contact Brazilian Jiu-Jitsu. And last fall, I did my first tournament. I didn't do well, but just the fact that I was fit and doing a Brazilian Jiu-Jitsu tournament, it's trained full contact, It's like they say 90% of all street fights end up on the ground, and most people don't really know how to defend themselves on the ground. So it's a great self-defense system, but it's also a sport, and I'm completely obsessed with it. Russell Brand and I have this in common. This past week, we both got our blue belts in Brazilian Jiu-Jitsu. Yeah.
Crazy.
So, but at the heart of all of this is looking at the spectrum of life. And you sort of just talked about it a minute ago. And I would be more general with it. And I would say for most people, they look at their lives and they say, I have a good life overall, but I have this one piece of the pie that I just can't seem to get any ground in. And maybe they have a great family, but they can't stand their job. Or maybe they love their job, but their relationship is on the rocks. Or maybe their relationship is great and their job is great, but they've had a weight thing or something about their body or something they're still waiting to heal from their childhood, something that they're hanging on to. And for me, jiu-jitsu is a manifestation of we really don't know what's around the corner.
Right.
And we do have the ability to change the way we think about change, and in doing so, change what's possible for that part of our life.
But I want to highlight something here because I think there's a lot of areas of my life I have sort of figured out. I take charge. I'm like, I'm going to figure this out and I'm going to do this myself. And I succeed. But there has been areas of my life where that has not been possible. And there were key people that like came into your story and, this trainer that came into your story. And I think there is something to the fact that any area of your life where you have repeated failure, you're going to require an external motivator. We actually first came across each other at an author event. And this author said to his trainer, he's like, I'm not really paying you to teach me. I'm paying you for your will. You give me the will I need in this situation to actually show up and train. You're kind of like this accountability person. And so much of like the coaching stuff we do, whether it's relationship, Enneagram, the life coaching work that you do, like you need someone to come alongside you and support this journey. Because there's certain things you will be able to conquer on your own. And there's certain things where it's just like, there's a deficit. And we need someone external. I actually had a friend who, in his early 20s, his finances were so out of control, he turned all of his financial control over to a friend of his who was like a financial wizard and like really understood how to manage all of his money. He's like, I have no personal control. I have no self-control in this arena. So I'm going to need to relinquish it for a little while, and you're going to help me figure this out.
Yeah.
And you're going to walk alongside me. And I think there's something that is so key in the work that you do that highlights like you do need help in some of these areas.
You do. And in the coaching work that I do as a coactive coach, we don't presume that we have the answers for people. What we presume is that we have powerful questions and curiosity that will lead a person to the answers that are already inside of them. Now, as an author and speaker, I get to be a little bit more preachy about some things that I think are good universally for people. And they are the things that helped me. And at the core is really the fact that most people, if you ask them what their half dozen or so core values are, what their absolute non-negotiable core values are, they have no idea. And what you realize is that most people who haven't cultivated a list of core values are really going through life just winging it. And
or on default. We talk about this all the time, like people being in default mode.
Default mode. Yeah. Right? That's a great term. They're winging it. It's default. They might try something for a while that might work for a while. They might get lucky and try something that like really works well. But the process of cultivating, of discovering and cultivating and honoring your own list of deeply held core values. And I'm not talking about just kind of sitting there and then going, well, I value love, honesty, truth, and, and just kind of listing these things.
Right. It's things that I should value.
Things that I should value.
That everyone probably would say they value, but they're not specific.
Exactly.
And specificity is the key to success.
Yeah, it's specificity in being granular in goal setting, but being granular in determining your core values is, I believe that that's the nitrous for personal growth. Because I said 7 years ago, and I had that epiphany. You're enslaved by your feelings, and it's as if they have absolute say in what you're going to do or not do. Now, what I have come to realize is not only do I have a choice, but the counterbalance to my feelings, no matter how powerful those feelings are, my counterbalance to my feelings and the thing that actually causes me to follow through on the commitments that I make are my values. For every change that I want to make in my life, I can look at my core values and I can find the fuel. Because look, our feelings are like the weather. Our feelings change all the time, but our values, those are formed over our lifetime and they rarely change. And the way that I like to think about it for myself is my feelings are kind of like the weather, but my values are my shelter. My values are my fortress. My values are my place that I can go when the storm is raging. I can get grounded. People have a million different definitions for what success is, but I define success very simply as making and keeping commitments. I don't define success as, having this much money in the bank or having this killer relationship or a big house or a fancy whatever. Though I would feel successful if I had your 1967 Martin acoustic guitar. If that was mine, I would feel very successful. But,
well, could you share some of your core values?
Yeah, I definitely can share my core values with you. My most important, deeply held core value is compassionate connection. And that rules my relationships. It rules my interaction with the world, and whether that is with my mom or my girlfriend or you. It also affects the way that I interact with the person who's making my coffee or the person who's serving me food. Compassionate connection. Because I know what it's like to feel alone. I know what it's like to feel unseen. I know what it's like to create a persona. So compassionate connection, impact. I want to have impact in everything that I do. I don't want to waste time. I don't want to go through the motions for 8 hours a day and come home and, watch Jeopardy and eat dinner and go to bed and repeat that. I want to have a life that's impactful. Health has become really important to me. And a lot of people will list health willy-nilly as a value. I think when push comes to shove, most people would feel like health is important, but I'm holding it differently now.
Well, when you have an experience that makes you aware of the fragility and how finite your life can be.
Yeah. No, there's no question. And whether that is, watching my dad suffer that stroke when I was a kid, or the fact that I just had a weird blood clot thing that happened as a result of a long flight back from from the West Coast a few months ago. I want to be healthy. I want to fuel this machine thoughtfully and well. I want to make sure that I'm training jujitsu 5 times a week and that I'm giving it everything that I have. Faith is a core value. You and I talk about this all the time. My faith is in a profound state of transformation and evolution right now, which is at once scary and also really beautiful and interesting. The shift that has happened in my heart and my desire now to make sure that my faith is in check, in that if the things that I am believing are not making me kinder, more inclusive, and more generous, then they go. They don't go. And then one that I know that we both share is creativity, you know? So I want to bring, so whatever area of my life that I want to grow in or see change happen in, I am making commitments that are based on my values, that are born from that, and recognizing that I actually have a say in my feelings. One of the things that we have people do, and we wrote about this in the book. My best friend Brant and I wrote a book last year called Rock and Roll With It: Overcoming the Challenge of Change. And one of the things that we do, we practice it, and we recommend to our people is to actually schedule your feelings. Most of the feelings that are unsupportive of our goals tend to happen at the same time. Think about this now. If you are, when do you usually run? Yeah, I know you're doing trail running. When do you usually run?
There is like group events. Then I usually do like a run or a swim or a bike ride, like, in the mornings.
Okay.
Yeah.
Early?
Yeah.
Okay.
Earlier side.
How early?
Depends. Last few days, the last couple of weeks, I guess it's been like 6:30-ish.
Okay. So now let's say you know, and I don't know if this is true for you or not, but let's just say that you know that when you wake up to do your run, you know you're going to be exhausted. Maybe you were up late the night before. Maybe your little girl was sick that night, and you were up with her, taking care of her, or Abby's got something going on, and you just kind of know that consistently you've made this commitment to run in the morning, but you know that you're going to typically feel exhausted in the morning. We will actually have people put in their calendar, I'm going to wake up at 6 o'clock and I'm going to feel exhausted. Here are the reasons that I'm going to feel exhausted. Wow. Here are the reasons why it makes sense and it is right, good, and appropriate for me to be exhausted. And then just after that, I'm going to run 5 miles. Right? That's my commitment. I'm scheduling my feelings. My feeling is that I'm going to feel exhausted and not like I want to, and like I don't want to get out of bed. My commitment is that I'm going to run 5 miles. And then you schedule the feelings that you're going to likely have after you complete your run. And in doing this, you have honored your feelings, you've stayed committed to your values, you've kept your commitment, and you have said to your feelings, I don't shame you, I don't banish you, I honor you, and to my unsupportive feelings, there's good reason for you to be there, and for the supportive feelings that I'm going to have after I accomplish my commitment, I'm excited about experiencing you.
Yeah.
And that process has been game-changing for me.
Yeah, that's really good. So since this podcast is the art of growth and Enneagram panels, there's an Enneagram element that I need to throw in right here. Because some of you might be hearing the feelings aspect a lot, and you might be thinking, if you're really familiar with it, well, this is a heart triad thing. This is like the 2s, 3s, and 4s. This is the people who experience life through the emotional center first. These are the people who experience a lot of emotions. They are kind of scanning their environment of how are other people feeling, or they're looking internally, like how am I feeling and what's the authenticity of this moment. But the thing is, all of us operate from all 3 centers. And if you're a body type, if you're an 8, 9, or a 1, you do your action first, your thoughts second, and your emotions third. And so sometimes we can be even a bigger slave to our emotions because we don't see how they're functioning. We're not as aware that they are actually running a part of our life. And head people too, you think, oh, I'm thinking my emotions instead of feeling my emotions. There's a lot of thought behind it. There's this sort of mental spinning and there's this justification process. But a lot of times we're not realizing the feelings that are actually running the show. Like we all have all this stuff operating. And when someone says this thing like Jim's story about you don't have to be run by your feelings. I have a choice in this moment. Some of you are really aware that you have a choice. Some of you are really aware of your emotions and some of you are not. But we all have a voice that pulls us from being our best self because of this default mode, this programming, this autopilot thing that we can get into where we're not living into our values. And often there's an emotion kind of behind that. You know, as an 8, I experience anger, or I'll put anger out as the choice feeling. But a lot of times it's because I'm hiding and tucking other emotions behind that. You know, for most of my life, this whole belief that, well, I'm not athletic. I don't have the ability to be athletic. I don't have the ability to, I don't think my entire life I had run more than like a mile up until I was like in my mid to late 30s. And then I did just enough to do a 5K and then never went beyond that. So to actually like put in real distances of this foreign thought. But there's so much emotion operating in the background of that programming that I was just kind of unaware of. I didn't want to admit to. Yeah. Because I think for a lot of times people who aren't as in touch with their emotions, they don't actually realize why they know what to do and don't do it. They don't realize that there's an emotion connected to. Yeah. They don't realize that there is something running the show. There is something hijacking their life that is continually sabotaging a certain area of their life.
And I think that that's because for most of us, we really want to avoid aversive feelings, right? Because of the level of self-judgment and the inner critic that we sort of all, or at least everyone I've met, carries a certain level of inner criticism and shame. And one of the things that has become really important to me in terms of my own practice and my client work is feelings are not good or bad. Yeah. Period. Feelings can be supportive and unsupportive, but with the discovery of the fact that there is an emotional connection to our personal growth, as you're saying, those unsupportive feelings are usually there for a really, really good reason. Take my situation, abusive dad, merciless bullying. I didn't ask for any of that stuff. And the unsupportive feelings that are born out of that stuff, there's nothing for me to be ashamed of. It's there for me to be aware of. And this is true for whether or not you're a salesperson and you're trying to make your quota, or you are an author and you're trying to write your book, or any of these other things that we might be wanting to accomplish. A vulnerability in how you want to approach your lover, but you feel like you can't because of these feelings. And it's just this shame spiral, I think is the term that you used earlier. But when you recognize that the feelings that you're having, even the unsupportive ones, even the really aversive ones that bring up profound fear and insecurity and the things that you hope nobody ever sees or knows about in you, they're there for really good reason. Yeah. And when you actually come to terms with the fact that just because you're having these unsupportive feelings, just because you have this level of pain associated with your feelings, that's nothing to be ashamed of. And by leaning into that, and really, Brene Brown writes so much about vulnerability, but my favorite Brene Brown quote is that vulnerability looks like truth and feels like courage. Truth and courage are not always easy, but they are never seen as weakness. That quote for me is like when I really lean into the unsupportive feelings that have held me back over the course of my life, and I take the shame out of them, and I spend time with them, and I spend enough time with them to the point where I can direct them, I'm free. I'm free. I want it for everybody, and I want it in every part of their lives. That passage of scripture that says nothing has seized you except that which is common. We're all in this. And to the person who is listening to this podcast who thinks that the thing that they are struggling with is so out there or so crazy or so insurmountable, I want that person to know that I totally get it. I totally get why they would feel that way. And the hope for change is as real and true and accessible for them as it is for anybody. If I had told you 15 years ago that you're going to be trail running at the level that you are right now.
If you would have showed me anything about my life, I wouldn't have believed it.
Me too.
I think that's
right?
the thing. Yeah, because you don't know these, because it's often these small tweaks. You kind of project out your current reality as your permanent reality.
Yeah.
That's what we tend to do.
Totally.
And we have no idea that when we make these small tweaks, that our life will look utterly different.
Utterly different.
In ways that we can't even imagine.
Yeah.
And often it's like a leap of faith. When we say like, do your work, take this next step, make this small tweak. We think small tweaks, but you have no idea. Like that small tweak literally changes the trajectory of your life, and you are no longer on the same road 10 years from now. And it takes sometimes that long to see the full implications of the decisions you're making.
Totally. And I have no idea what's next, but I know that right now I am at my lowest weight since middle school. I am flying in airplanes in one seat comfortably all over the world all the time for events.
Yeah.
That I'm competing in a full contact martial art. That I've got great love in my life. Yeah. And none of these things, I had very good reason to believe that none of these things would ever be possible for me. But here I am, and here you are.
Right.
And I don't have any idea what's next.
I know, but
I'm excited about whatever it is.
I know, it's so exciting though, because there's so much potential. It's like, I want people to understand that if you want to look for people to learn from and spend time with, look for people who have been in some kind of a major struggle, gone through some kind of a major failure, and their life looks completely different now. I think that's what I spotted in you right off the bat, and why I'm like, I have to get to know that guy, because I want to get to know people and spend time with people who understand that small tweaks are monumental in change. It's small things done with great love change the world, as Mother Teresa says. But small things done with great love to yourself will change yourself, will change the trajectory of your life in ways you cannot possibly imagine.
Totally. I think it's important to note that ultimately there's two different kinds of change. There's the intentional change, right? The thing that you want to change. I want to change my business. I want to change my body. I want to change my relationship. These are the things that I have intention around. And then there's unintentional change. They're the things that happen to us out of the blue. It's the phone call that you get on Tuesday afternoon that someone that you love has been diagnosed, or you go to your physical and you find out that you've been diagnosed, or you lose somebody suddenly and it's devastating and your whole world is rocked. Yeah. You walk into the office after a 25-year career with a company and you find out that there are cutbacks and you've been let go. What we say is there are some changes that we want to make and some changes that we're forced to take. But whether it's an intentional or an unexpected change, the path to growing through that into who you really want to be is the same. It is a mining for your personal core values. It is directing your feelings. It is making and keeping commitments. And one of the things we talk about in the book is you're a musician, so you know what a cover song is, right? We say, there's a cover song approach to change, right? And so if you are struggling with addiction, Alcoholics Anonymous might be your cover song. The song has already been written for you. You need to play that song. Or if you're working on like weight loss, Weight Watchers, those are cover song approaches to that. It's all written. All you have to do is learn that song. If you are struggling with profound grief, it might be a grief group that becomes your cover song, or a therapeutic method that becomes your cover song. And then after you've played that cover song for a while, you learn how to do a sample song. And a sample song is like, remember Ice Ice Baby?
Yeah.
Ding, 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 ding. A sample song for the non-music.
Yes.
That's when you take a little piece of a song, right? So now you might have done Weight Watchers for 3 years and you've done well, and there are some things you need to alter that. You need to alter the program to make it sustainable. And then before you know it, you're writing your original song, which is like, you now are on a life track that you have written to create the change that you want to create in your own life.
So good.
It sounds cheesy, but man, I'll tell you what, it works.
No, that resonates. I mean, yeah, but that's also like follow someone else's program until you figure out your own. I think for a lot of times people hear the information like, I need to change, and they go straight to innovation.
Yep.
Like, this is how I'm going to do it. I'm going to create my program.
Yeah.
But you really have to travel through imitation.
Totally.
You have to imitate people who have sort of figured it out, who have gotten it right. You need to come along some people that have gotten this thing right. I mean, one of the things I wanted to do this year is actually just spend more time with people who had, fitness as a bigger part of their life.
Yeah.
Because they're going to mention it. They're going to talk about it. And then I'll be like, well, man, I got to get out there and do it too.
Yeah.
And I think I actually avoided those conversations where I'd change the subject or I'd make a joke about it, because I was uncomfortable being completely disconnected with my feelings. I didn't understand that there was probably a shame thing there that I wasn't tapping into.
Yep.
But being like now, okay, I want to put people around me who get this piece. Because if I spend some time with them, they're going to rub off on me. And I want to spend as much time with people who I want rubbing off on me.
I will tell you that when I see you post about trail running, it makes me excited about jiu-jitsu.
Yes, exactly.
I'm like, Jim
Out for a bike
Zartman,
ride, and now you're going to go to jiu-jitsu. Yeah.
I just can't wait to like sit and have coffee with you and know that morning you were either out surfing or running or just going out there, as the famed Navy SEAL Jocko Willink says, get some, right? Jocko Willink he's up at 4:30 every morning because he wants to be up before the enemy. He's like, he wants to be up before the enemy. And just knowing that you're up and you're out there and you're getting some. And this morning, I was up at 6. I was on the jiu-jitsu mat at 7. And then I'm ready. Now I'm ready for my day.
That's so great.
And I think it's really important to know, I haven't arrived, right? We still have a whole host of things that we're working on. And 100% commitment is completely unrealistic and unrequired, right? It is unrealistic, and there is no such thing as 100% commitment. I refer to myself as an imperfectionist. I'm an imperfectionist. Do you know why I'm an imperfectionist?
Yeah.
Because imperfection exists. Perfection doesn't exist. I no longer look at my development or my growth as though it's a house of cards.
Right.
That if I blow it, that in any area of my life and work, if I blow it, I blow it. But that doesn't mean it's over. You just get back up. Just talk to yourself the way you would talk to a little kid.
Yeah, I actually treat everything like practice.
Great.
Growing, I always think of myself as I'm just in another rehearsal. It doesn't matter what I'm doing. I just view it as this is just another rehearsal. It doesn't matter. Like, I remember going through that in my head when I'm standing on stage in a stadium in front of 6,500 people and I'm playing the song and I'm like, it's just another day practicing.
Yeah.
I'm just practicing.
Yeah.
I think so many people, they put so much weight on this one moment. Like it has to go well.
Yeah.
And no, like sometimes you're going to get today right.
Yeah.
But what you stack up enough of those days And you build the hope muscle.
Yeah.
The hope muscle that says, if I do enough of something, I actually am going to see change over the long haul.
Yeah.
And even all of the failures that I've had in, I don't know, every area of my life, I go, oh, but I have hope because I know I can move this a little bit today.
Yeah.
I can move this knob just a little bit.
Yeah.
And I know that even moving it a little bit has a long-term effect.
I competed in a jiu-jitsu tournament this past weekend, and I did not get onto the mat and think, this is just practice. I didn't think that. I got out there and I completely panicked. I completely panicked, and I got smashed. Like my knee is killing me. I got smashed. I'm there, and I've got my teachers are watching me, and all of the the brown belts and the purple belts are all watching me compete, and I just freaked out. And
but you still showed up.
Oh, I showed up. And I'm psyched. Well, here's the thing. Yeah. I don't have any shame over it. I'm not I'm going to quit jujitsu. Right. I'm just like, oh, the hell was that? But to your point, it's like when you're committed to something and you hold those moments, right? That those freak out moments. I wish that I had talked to you the morning before that and that you could have just looked at me and said, Jim, just remember this role is just practice. Yeah. Just go in there, be loose. Yeah. Be loose, chill out. Don't freak out. Don't spaz. That's right. That's a good word. And
it helps me too. It actually de-escalates my own anxiety in moments where I think I would be really nervous. Yeah. Like if I were to just show up on some, international podcast, I'm comfortable in my podcast. I'm on my studio. I'm always comfortable in here. Yeah. But if I got invited onto one that was a really big deal and I'm like, oh no. But I would literally just say to myself, you're practicing as a communicator.
Yeah, totally.
How to speak your thoughts, how to try and say things in a way that connects to people.
Yeah.
All of that, I'm just trying to continue to learn and get better at and develop.
Yeah, that's a really good word.
So I think a lot of you would really resonate with all of this story from Mr. Jim Trick here. And you might feel very comfortable working with him or connected working with him in a way that you may not with us, with Joel or I, even on the show so far. And if you do, I want you to get in contact with him. So how can people, find your work and get in contact with you?
Yeah. The easiest way is to go to jimtrick.com. It's spelled just like it sounds, JIM, T as in Tom, RICK. Being named Trick didn't help me much in middle school, but it's a good name now.
It is a great name.
Yeah. jimtrick.com. I respond to all of my emails. If you want to chat, I would love to chat. And working really hard at getting out and sharing this message in groups as well. So companies and organizations that want to find out how to change what's possible, not only for their company, but for the lives of all of their employees. I'm uniquely excited about those opportunities, and it's getting a little crazy right now, which is really fun.
That's so great.
Cool opportunities that have come up. This year is busy, and next year is going to be crazy busy.
Yeah, that's really exciting.
I love one-on-one coaching too. That's at the heart of my work these days. So
yeah. So if you'd like to have Jim out to speak with your corporation, your organization, you can do that. Contact him through jimtrick.com. Also for individual coaching, you can speak with him at Life Coaching. So I'm going to leave you with one of my favorite songs from Jim Trick, All's Not Lost.
There are two kinds of love, the kind you want and the kind you get. There's the first one that you ever had. It's the one you can't forget, but you can't go there. There's a distance in your memory of a heartache laid aside, and you don't regret the pain you felt, but you are not sure why, and you can't leave there. But all's not lost and you're not lost at all. There are two kinds of lies. Some you tell, some you believe. You will rid yourself of both one day, and you will be relieved, but you don't know now. It's that story you're repeating. It's a picture in a frame. It's like a car crash, you can't look away, and you may never be the same, but I won't go there. But all's not lost and you're not lost at all. All's not lost and you're not lost at all. You can put me in your suitcase, stored beneath the bed. You will wipe the dust off someday to say the things you wish you'd said, but I won't be there. 'Cause all's not lost and I'm not lost at all. All's not lost and I'm not lost at all. All's not lost and I'm not lost at all.